Popular culture in the 1920s. The Charleston was the big dance of the 1920s. And when this video loads, take a minute and watch the video. It's actually live footage. Very fun. Americans bought into a consumer culture. Make sure you get that down. Now, consumer means that you are buying a product. We are all consumers. But in the 1920s, that was a new thing. There were new products that made life easier. There were great advertisements to show women that, oh man, if you bought this washing machine, it would make your life easier. You would have more time to go out and party with your friends. If you had a refrigerator, you didn't have to worry about the ice melting. If you had an iron, your clothes would look ever so nice. Now, one of the things that made consumer culture boom or grow was the fact that they could buy on credit. You're arranging to buy something now and paying later. Now, that's a new concept in the 1920s. Make sure you record credit. Installment buying is when you make a down payment and you make smaller payments later. Also record installment buying. Now, mass media is really going to shape American culture. Magazines like the Saturday Evening Post told women what was cool, what was popular, what the latest movie stars were doing. This is the first time we see magazines being bought on a large scale. Radio gives voice to stars with sitcoms, with mysteries. They would have dramas, comedies. RCA was the first national broadcasting radio station. Now, 60% of American families purchased a radio. So this was the big thing. Remember, TV doesn't exist. Motion pictures become even more popular. We see the change from silent film stars like Mary Pickford to action movie and talkies where they actually have voiceovers. That didn't happen. Rudolph Valentino was a great movie star. If you click on the Rudolph Valentino, you're going to see a piece of the shake, and that's a silent film. If you click on the jazz singer, you're going to see a section from the first talkie that was ever made. Now remember, the radio still is king. Not everybody can afford to go to the movies, but most radios or most families had a radio in their house. 60%. That's a huge deal. 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. Now, League of Women Voters wanted to help women know what to vote for or how to vote. A lot of them were very scared because they didn't know what that entailed. So what they did was they passed out flyers, they had meetings, they walked them through the whole process. League of Women Voters, make sure you write that down. Harlem Renaissance was around the city of Harlem, New York. It was an explosion of African American culture, which promoted arts, literature, and music. Now, one of the big clubs, you can see it in the background of this picture, is the Cotton Club. People like Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong were two leading jazz musicians. They used what was called improvisation, where you're not really playing written down music, but you're making things up as you go. And it was a combination of influences that really was indicative, that reflected African American culture, especially in New York. That's why it's called the Harlem Renaissance. Charleston came out of this time period too. Remember that first slide. Next, here are two poems. You can see Langston Hughes on the right, and the name of the poem is The Negro Speaks of the Rivers. And it talks about how the embodiment of being a slave and going through the process. Beautiful poem. Take a minute and read it. On the left, you see Georgia Douglas Johnson. Now, if you know anything about Maya Angelou, she was the one, Georgia Douglas Johnson influenced Maya Angelou, or Angelou, sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, The Heart of the Woman. Now, Sports gods appear. We have a 8-hour workday. We have a 5-hour work week, which means I have a little more time than I've ever had before if I'm a working class citizen. So I can listen to radio broadcasts about sporting events. And I even have time on the weekend to go to a football game or a baseball game. This is when the NFL and the American Baseball League, these things are really in their heyday. Stadiums, you would walk and see your favorite team. You could see Gertrude Airedale. She was the first American to swim across the English Channel. Babe Ruth was known as the Sultan of Swat, also the great Bambino. Ever watched The Sandlot? Check it out; it's a great movie. And Jim Thorpe was a Native American football player and track and field star. Jack Dempsey was a big name in boxing. So we have the popular culture really influencing America.